I'm going to start this video off with a small disclaimer. This video is horrendously low effort. I mean, I'm probably going to record it in one session, but in order to continue my YouTube career, so to speak, I have to start making videos again. That said, I do encourage you to watch anyway. I will have some interesting stuff to say, and for any of my friends who are watching, you'll learn some stuff if I haven't been talking to you as much lately. With that said, please enjoy whatever the fuck this is. While I know most of my viewers are not reoccurring viewers, and this is probably the first video of mine you've even seen, I would like to go over what I've been doing since I left YouTube. I mean, not like anyone missed me. It's only been 3 months and I only have 1,000 subscribers. I do want to say, though, I am very grateful for the 1,000 subscribers, and in the future I will try to do events or something cool when I have enough subscribers. I just didn't think 1,000 was as noteworthy. I'm sure a lot of them are bots or people who just thought one video was interesting. But once I have a audience that I know is going to come back for every video, I will do something special for y'all. So if you're not interested, because I'm sure you probably aren't, there is going to be a small fun story about my really weird coworker later on in the video. I will put a timestamp here, or maybe right there, or somewhere else. But, you know, even if you don't know me and you just want to hear the story, I still encourage you to just watch anyway, because I might have something interesting to say, or at least it's background noise. I know a lot of people want second monitor content, so here you go. Here's some second monitor content. So, the last time I was on YouTube, that was about 3-ish months ago, and exactly 3-ish months ago, I got a job! I know, most of you unemployed chuds won't know why I would subject myself to employment. But for the sane amongst you, I'm sure you understand the need to pay bills and whatnot. So let me explain just a little bit. I quit YouTube, in quotes, quit, because I was just getting used to having a job in the first place. And so I needed time to adjust. And now, more recently, I've realized that I don't want to work a 9 to 5 for the rest of my life. And that's partially why I'm here. Now, I know every tiny little kid is like, I got an iPhone and I'm gonna record a 4-minute little video on my crappy iPhone, and then I'm gonna post it to YouTube, and I'm gonna become a YouTuber like Markiplier, and then I'm gonna have a million billion subscribers and millions of dollars, and I'll buy a mansion and a Lamborghini and blah, 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 blah. But I took film classes in high school, and I know high school film classes, wow, I'm so smart, I must know everything about filmmaking. But I did take film classes in high school, and when I took those film classes, that was the most interesting thing I've ever done in my life. Every single project, even though I did skip out on a few projects and I phoned it in sometimes, every single project that I did, I enjoyed, and I felt like I was getting better every time, and I had some real editing skills, at least for the time and for just basic high school group projects. But I really just enjoyed the crap out of it. It's the thing I enjoy the most. When I make YouTube videos, the few that I have made, I enjoy every second of making it, and I enjoy it way more than anything else I do. And it's subjective whether or not I'm really actually any good at it, but I'd like to think that I have at least enough potential to bother trying. So that's why I'm here. I want to just, so to speak, get on the wagon again. And that's why my first video is just a really long, extensive rant by an incoherent, insane person. So please bear with me in the low quality of this video. But like I said, I'm here to talk about what I've been doing since I left. Firstly, I guess I could talk about my job. I work at a factory. For the sake of my privacy and not wanting to step on any toes or get fired, I'll just call this place the factory. At the factory, I take some screws and some parts and such, and some of this and some of that and some whatever, and I build what is called a subassembly. Subassembly is just something that you build, and then somebody else takes that and builds another thing with it. And usually that leads to a long chain of stuff, like how old style factory lines would work. But in my place, we just build one thing, and then somebody else builds another thing, and then at the very end, it all comes together all at once. So it's not like something I build will be built upon later. It's all just one cohesive thing. And again, for privacy, I'll just call the thing that we actually make with all the sub-assemblies put together a unit, so to speak, because that's what they call them, but that's not the actual name of it. It's just some sort of a unit. Um, what I can tell you about what I make is that it's medical equipment. And something that you should understand about medical equipment is that most medical equipment has a lot of regulations, and a lot of stuff needs to be done to a very high standard because it's, of course, medical equipment. Either A, somebody's life depends on it, or B, it's super important, or C, it needs to be sterile and it needs to be clean and it needs to work and it needs to be waterproof and it needs to work for an absurdly long time without breaking. So just keep that in mind, the fact that it's medical equipment, for the stuff that I'm going to tell you in a minute. It's quite ridiculous with that context in your head. I wish I could tell you more, but I really, again, don't want to do anything that would be crazy or get me in any sort of trouble. I won't sugarcoat it. I won't even lie to you. I'll just come out and say it, what I'm talking about. My job is a mismanaged, poorly designed nightmare. It's just a nightmare. I know that's not surprising. I know most of you who have had jobs or are currently working would tell me that, yeah, all the jobs are terrible and they all suck and they're all mismanaged. But it is more important when it's medical equipment. And what do I mean by mismanaged? Let me tell you a small little story. So, about a month into working, I had been fully trained. I even started training a few people, at least two at the time. About a month in, I ran out of parts to build my subassembly. Nothing too crazy, just go into the back room, get more parts, and if they're unfortunately out of parts, you just wait a few days, preferably just the rest of your shift, and at the end of this shift, you'll get new parts, or maybe next week, or at the latest, you'll get new parts. When I tell you, I had no parts for over a month, I am dead serious. For over a month, I did nothing. I would run back and forth from my desk to the bathroom to the storage to look for more parts, and up and down the assembly line in case I could borrow parts from somebody else. It was like one day it was a screw, the other day it was an essential plastic component, the next day it was like a circuit board. It was always something. There was always something we were out of. And like, oh, don't worry, I found that screw that you were out of. Here's the screw. And then I'd start building my sub-assemblies again, and I'd be putting it together, and then, oh, I'm out of this other screw, or I'm out of this plastic piece, or I'm out of circuit boards. And it's just ridiculous. It took them over a month for them to get me all the parts I needed. And apparently, I'll try and keep this super discreet and brief, they were giving parts to another company, and that was partially why. I won't say the context, but that is absurd. We're already low on parts most of the time, so the fact that they were just throwing parts at other companies, like a side hustle, it was absurd. We were always out of parts. Just to put this into perspective, if your local Chick-fil-Cane Church's chicken place was out of chicken for a month, there would be literal riots in the street. There would be buildings burnt, and people would get hurt. Because when a business runs out of a supply for over a week, that's a problem. Over a month, that's like the equivalent of a person going into cardiac arrest. It's serious. It's a big issue. And yet, it was fine. We were just out of parts, and that was it. Like, my boss knew that we were out of parts, and I told people, hey, I'm out of this part, or I'm out of that part, and I'm missing stuff. And they were like, just sit around, wait for there to become parts in the storage area so we can give you parts. And it's just absurd to me that we were almost always out of parts, and that we were out for a month. because I build a subassembly that somebody else then attaches to the full unit, none of the units got made. Thankfully, for the first few weeks, we got a couple leftovers, parts that I'd already built but hadn't been used yet. So those got used in the full units, and so we were able to salvage it for that month. But if I hadn't built extra and there wasn't an overflowing amount of subassemblies, we would have just not built anything for a month. That is absurd. Honestly, towards the end, I felt like one of those people who has like a higher up job and they don't actually do anything, but their resume is really impressive, so they just spend all day being like, "Oh no, I'm an essential worker. I do so much around here. My presence would be felt if I left the company or you fired me." You know, one of those just stupid CEOs just justifying their very expensive job, but I wasn't a CEO or anyone with a crazy impressive resume. It was my first job, and I was like, oh, well, I guess I just have to sit here and hope that nobody fires me while I'm not doing anything. Well, my job aside, I've been drawing every once in a while again. I think I plan to draw the thumbnail. I guess if you saw the thumbnail, you'll know whether or not I kept to that promise or not. I've also been hanging out with my friends a lot more, especially since I got my driver's license. It wasn't as hard as I thought it would be. I spent like 6 months between my permit and getting my license, or some really long time, because normally you're supposed to spend 6 months, because if you're like 16 and you get your permit, then you need to wait 6 months and then you can get your license. For me, I didn't get my permit until I was 18, so I ended up just sitting on it. I would practice, but not as much. It's just that when I got my job, I started driving with my mom in the car so that she could help me practice for my driver's test. And once I started driving every day, I started realizing how easy it was, and then I was able to just go ahead and get my license. So now I can do whatever I want. I mean, today I drove home from work and I bought a new microphone. I don't know if anyone watches my other videos, but you can probably tell. I mean, just go to one of my older videos. You can hear my microphone's not super great, and this one's a lot better. Anywho, now that I have my job, I'm just sort of working on moving out of my parents' house. I gotta save up a lot of money, and that's part of why I'm on YouTube again. And I promise not all my videos will be like this. I don't even know who's gonna watch this stuff, but if you do watch this stuff and you think it's good, then let me know. Maybe I'll make a second channel or a playlist or something of me just ranting like incoherently, but I will try to make the stuff higher quality, like the videos that came before this one. So that leads me to the last part of this video. You probably either skipped to this part or you slogged through the rest of my rambling nonsense. And so I'm going to get into it, but before I do, I'm just going to say that the rest of this video was mostly scripted, with a few points that I added there just on my own, but the rest of this is just going to be what I want to say, just however I feel. So I'll start by saying that we're going to call this guy Jim. We're like from The Office. So just in your head, picture Jim from The Office. He had a little bit more of a beard than Jim from The Office, but just imagine Jim. So Jim, my coworker, he is probably the most insane person I have ever met. And I kid you not, this is not some clickbait. This is not some weird nonsense. I'm being genuine when I say he is one of the weirdest people I've ever met. So Jim was the guy who trained me. He is about 30-ish. And, well, before I get ahead of myself, if you think you're Jim and you're watching this, I am sorry. I won't give any personal information, and I normally don't talk smack about people, but you're insane. I'm sorry. So, sorry, Jim. But for those who are not Jim, let me just get into the story. So Jim was the guy who trained me, and he was about 30. And he would tell me occasionally these super religious things. And there's nothing wrong with religion. Some people feel like it's very inappropriate to talk about in the workplace, and I can see that, but personally, I don't care that much. I won't bring it up myself, but I don't mind talking about it with somebody if it's something they care about. It's a good thing to have small talk for in some situations, but his religious discussions were absurd. And I don't just mean, oh, Jesus is gonna come to earth and kill everybody kind of insane. I mean, well, it would be best if I just started telling you. The first insane thing he told me was that he has dreams that are directly from God. Not a super insane thing to confess. I know a lot of people think they have prophetic dreams and whatnot, but his were literally from God, according to him. He told me this one story about how he was locked in a basement at some point of like a building, and that he crawled his way out through a vent hole, and that somehow Jesus was responsible because there's a Bible verse somewhere about crawling out of a hole. I don't know. I don't read the Bible, and I don't know any verses, and I wasn't really paying attention to the specific details. So if you know what he was referring to, then please feel free to tell me, but I have no idea what he was talking about. The next crazy thing was he told me that in these dreams that he has, he foresees a future where Bitcoin, the cryptocurrency, would crash. And then, while it was crashed and a low price, he would buy as much of it as he physically could. And then, when Bitcoin finally returned to its normal price, because apparently Bitcoin will crash for some reason, but then it'll be okay again, I'm not sure, he would then become the richest person on Earth. And then, with his riches, he would spread the word of God and then become president of the world. Which, I have to say, is quite absurd, because there is no such thing as president of the world. That's not a title that anyone holds. There is no president of anything that's more than one country. But that's besides the point. That's a drop in the bucket, him becoming president of the world. Well, actually, yeah, there was a story he told me one time where he was living somewhere else, not where I currently live, which I won't tell you, but he was living in a different state. And he was, I assume, drugged out of his mind, and he was knocking on random people's doors because he thought he could hear God, and that God was directing him to the mayor's house of wherever he was living at the time. And so he knocked on this stranger's house, not the mayor, keep in mind, not the mayor, just some stranger, and said, "Mr. Mayor, you have to direct me to the president. I have been chosen by God." And so you can imagine a weird little Jim showing up on your doorstep, knocking, demanding you take him to the president is creepy and weird and really off-putting. Because it is. And also, you know, especially if you're not the mayor, you have no importance. You're just some person. So he gets arrested and thrown in a mental hospital. This is not the first time this has happened. But apparently, when that happened, he was currently planning to fly to Russia. Which leads me into my next weird little anecdote. He also talked about, separately from the Bitcoin plans and the President of the World plans, that at some point he would move to Russia to preach Christianity. You know, Russia, the famously not Christian place. I assume at some point he realized the error of his ways, however, when he switched the story to wanting to move to North Korea to preach Christianity. And I don't want to be rude. I think anyone can preach anywhere if they want to, but we can all agree trying to preach your religion in North Korea is kind of a bad idea. And so after hearing all of these stories and all of this insanity that he just pulled right up out of his ass, he just vanishes one weekend. We didn't see him on Friday. He didn't come in for optional Saturday overtime, which is fine. Most people don't. I did that weekend, but I don't normally. And then we were like, okay, so maybe he just took a 3-day weekend. But then on Monday, he didn't come back either. And on Tuesday, he was still missing. So we're like, oh, he must be like really sick or something. Oh man, poor Jim, poor guy. But then he comes back on Wednesday. And we're like, oh, hey, Jim, welcome back. How are you? Were you sick? And he just looks at me and he kind of laughs like, dude, I got arrested. I was like, what? You got arrested for what? I was like, oh, you know, whatever. And I was like, what? So I figured he was just fucking with me. So I went back to my desk and I started working. And that's when one of my other coworkers came up to me and was like, hey, did you hear about Jim getting arrested? And I was like, oh, I thought he was joking. Are you sure he's not just joking? And they were like, yeah, dude, Jim got arrested. And I was like, well, what did he do? And he's like, he broke into a high school. If there's any time for a record scratch, that was there. He broke into a high school and did what? And they're like, oh no, he just broke in and he started screaming about God and stuff. And I was like, well, unfortunately, that's not very surprising. He was going to preach to North Korea. I'm sure the northern high school would be fine with it too, at least in his mind. And so they showed me a picture of him getting arrested in this blue shirt that I've seen him wear multiple times. And it was like, wow, he actually got arrested. Turns out, over the weekend, he had this plan. And part of that plan was talking to his high school football coach. Now, you may be sitting there wondering to yourself, high school football coach? Why would you go up to your high school football coach unless you, peaked in high school? And trust me, I don't think Jim peaked in high school. I don't think he peaked at all. Sorry, that's a little mean. But he had this dream at some point that his high school football coach would get promoted. And then at some point, his high school football coach got promoted. I believe he said the timing was a few weeks later. He showed me the texts. And that poor coach You could see in the texts that he wanted nothing to do with him because he would send, Jim, he would send like hundreds of texts that were like paragraphs long about his visions and his religion and his dreams. And the coach would just be like, yeah, man, that's super cool. that's awesome. Good for you, man. It's like, oh, that poor coach just being harassed by this full-grown man. He was like 34, which is insane. Who's texting their high school football coach at 34? Anywho, so over the weekend, Jim, with his only proof that his visions and his dreams were from God, being that his high school football coach happened to get promoted the same month that he had a dream about it, he decided that, you know what, I need to go talk to this football coach, because apparently, and I mean clearly, the texts weren't getting to him. So he waits until there's a passing period at the school, and I won't say what school, of course, but he waits until the passing period of the school, and he just walks right in while somebody's walking right out. And so even there, right then, pause, freeze frame, already broke the law. You cannot just walk into a high school. But on top of that, he starts walking around the school, screaming about how he's the true God and that everyone needs to wake up, which, again, changes his plan from being president of the world to now God. That being aside, he would yell at the students and he was running around, and apparently he never got to his coach. The coach was thankfully safe and sound from Jim's insanity. And so Jim got arrested over the weekend, and I think they let him out on bail or something, but then he had his trial, and so we never saw him again. I think he worked the Wednesday and Thursday the week he got arrested and then never came back. Recently, I heard that he was coming back to the factory to work, but I asked about it again, and it's been about 2 weeks since I was told that, and no news yet, so I assume Jim is not coming back, and I hope so. But that also adds to the absurdity that my workplace would hire this guy again, a second time. He had been to like 3 mental hospitals and arrested before, and the fact that they hired him anyway was insane, and the fact that they would hire him again after he got arrested while currently working at the factory is wild. Although I guess he didn't, get hired in the end. He never came back. So that's my unfiltered thoughts on my insane coworker. I hope you enjoyed whatever this is, and I will try to make something more interesting and less insane next time. If you liked the video, that's cool. There's they tell me there's buttons or something. Bye.